Hi guys! Welcome to Math Made Easy by Mrs. Roberts. This is going to be episode 3 in a little mini series I like to call Trig Integrals. And in this episode, we are going to be working through another example. So, in this episode, let's go ahead and find the integral of cosine cubed of x over the square root of sine of x dx. So we are going to go ahead and find that integral. Well, this is tricky. What I notice is that I have an odd degree for cosine. And so that tells me that I could split cosine into cosine times cosine squared of x, and then I could use a Pythagorean identity. So I think that's what I'm going to try to do. I think what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to rewrite this as cosine of x times cosine squared of x over the square root of sine of x dx. What that allows me to do is to replace cosine squared of x with 1 minus sine squared of x. And we get that from that Pythagorean identity. So what this is going to look like now is going to be the integral of cosine of x times 1 minus sine squared of x over the square root of sine of x dx. The odd degreed trig function is what you're going to use for your du because it allows you to set aside one. It allows you to set aside one of them to be your du. And if du is cosine of x, then our u is going to be sine of x. And so we want to prettyify this a little bit, split it up, do some distributing, and see where we go. So let's go ahead and distribute in this cosine of x and see if we can get this in a form that makes a little bit more sense. So this is going to be the integral of cosine of x minus cosine of x sine squared of x. This would be over the square root of sine of x. This would be over the square root of sine of x. And the whole thing still has a dx. Let's see if we can simplify this a little bit more. So that first integral, I think that's as simple as it's going to get. We're going to have the cosine of x over the square root of sine of x dx. And then we can figure out that our u will be sine of x, making our du cosine of x, making this entire integral the integral of du over the square root of u. And then we can solve that because really that's going to be the integral of u to the negative 1/2 du. We'll increase by one exponent and divide by that exponent, making this 2/3 u to the 3/2. And in the end, we'll go ahead and replace that u. So we need to work on this one a little bit. Well, that is going to be the integral of cosine of x times sine squared of x over the square root of sine of x. Well, the square root of sine of x is just 1/2. And so I could actually combine these. Let's make a little side note. So that's going to be sine, don't forget your dx at the end, sine squared of x times sine to the negative 1/2 of x. And when you're multiplying exponents, you just add your exponents. So this is really sine to the 3/2 of x. So this integral becomes negative sine to the 3/2 of x cosine of x dx. And we can say that our u is sine of x, making our du cosine of x. And that means we are going to subtract the integral of u to the 3/2 du. We'll increase by one exponent and divide by that exponent. And so we're going to be dividing by 2/5. And not dividing, we're dividing by 5/2, which ends up being multiplied by 2/5. And then our exponent is to the power of 5/2. And of course, we want our plus c at the end. One last step, we are going to plug back in our u's. And so we are going to have 2/3. And our u is sine to the 3/2 x minus 2/5 sine to the 5/2 x plus c. And there we have it. We integrated. So we integrated. So let's do a little recap before I give you the assignment I would like you to walk away with. So our recap, we started with cosine cubed of x over the square root of sine of x. Now cosine cubed of x was odd, and that clued us in that we could split it up so that we would only have one cosine left, and then we could use a Pythagorean identity. We used the Pythagorean identity, and we got things in terms of sine. We distributed, we broke up our fractions, we simplified, and then we did u substitution. And in the end, we were able to find our integral. So I have one I would like you guys to do. I would like you to find the integral of sine to the 6th power of x times cosine to the 3rd power of x dx. I hope to see you in episode 4.